to another episode of the Junkyard Dawgcast. I'm your host, Jordan Hill. Got Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk with me on this Tuesday afternoon. And fellas, spring practice is back in Athens, Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs, as we're recording this, it's a little bit after 4 p.m. Eastern Time. They're back on the practice field. They are getting ready to get the first of 15 practices in the books as they continue working for the closer and toward the 2026 season. The first of 15 practices, the last of which will be G-Day on Saturday, April 18th. And before we talk about everything we learned today, Ben, what was your favorite sights, from practice? Was it walking by the empty field when we got done? Because we did not get to watch anything today.
Yeah, as I was going to my car in the parking deck, I started to see some recruits starting to make their way towards the practice. A couple of them I didn't actually recognize, so I'm not even sure if we've got them on our list over at Dogs 24/7 or not. But yeah, it's spring ball, and while we didn't get to see them today, I'm hopeful that we might, perhaps, at least some of us later in the week.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit later, but we're going to get into what we learned. Obviously, this episode's a little bit more fun when we have gotten a chance to watch some of the guys in practice, but I do think we learned quite a bit from Kirby Smart. We talked to multiple players: Gunnar Stockton, Lawson Lucky, Raylan Wilson, and they all gave us some really good stuff, so we'll dive into that. And I think we got to start with the injury situation for Georgia. A few, I would say not very many, that were surprising on the injury front. Drew Bobo out for spring with that foot that he hurt against Georgia Tech. Kirby said should get back to work sometime over the weekend. Jordan Hall still out with the knee injury he suffered against Florida last year. Kirby did say he's running and doing some things, but they're not going to push the issue there. Defensive end Gabe Harris, who had that turf toe surgery before the Sugar Bowl, he will not be back. He is out for the duration of spring practice. Kyron Jones, the safety, still dealing with the ankle injury. A new defensive lineman, Carter Lucky, he had surgery to cap off his high school career, so he will not be available. And then really the biggest surprise was Zayden Walker, the inside linebacker, had a labral repair. You've seen Georgia do these pretty frequently in the offseason, and frankly, it was kind of surprising just to see the one that winds up having the surgery. But Ben, you were there as well. Anything that surprised you on the injury front, and who Georgia will have to go without over the next 5 weeks?
Nothing really surprises me, I guess. I guess the most surprising thing is that there wasn't really, a tightrope or a labrum injury or something like that that was really surprising. I think that especially like Drew Bobo, Kyron Jones, like some of the main ones that he mentioned right off the rip, we were aware of. And so yeah, I mean, I think that all things considered, I think pretty healthy going into the spring. And even the guys, maybe Zayden Walker notwithstanding, but everyone else, it's like you can almost justify how that's almost a good thing for Georgia in some ways. Like when we're talking about Drew Bobo and Georgia being without him this spring, like while you probably want your starting center and your starting quarterback to be able to get some work together in the spring, him and Gunnar Stockton know each other probably as good as any center and quarterback ever have. And so it's not the worst thing in the world that you're going to get some reps from some other guys throughout the course of spring. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that it sounds, at least as you head into spring, pretty positive on the injury front. And I think that that's a good thing.
100%. And there have been times Kirby kind of does like the state of the union, the state of the program, when he has that first spring availability. And sometimes that list is kind of long of guys, again, that have those kind of repairs and having things cleaned up. It wasn't necessarily the case, but those are some significant situations we're going to have to follow over the next weeks. And really, I was talking to someone on the beat after interviews and was talking about, that there's concern. You want those guys back healthy, but really, it's when you're in fall camp or it's like the start of fall camp and those guys are sort of, not 100% or not available during practice. That's when you should really be concerned. You'd love everybody to be available, but I don't think too much to be concerned about on that front. Considering the fact that we're talking about this is March 17th, I think Georgia will be just fine. Well, so loaded up some clips of Kirby today. We talked to him for about 16, 17 minutes, asked him some questions about this team, about the program as they get ready for the start of spring practice. And I want to start with this clip. there's been a few years where Georgia has retained its entire on-field coaching staff where there's not been those changes, but this year is not one of those years. They've got Larry Knight coming in as outside linebackers coach. He takes over for Chidera Uzodiribe. And then Phil Rauscher has been elevated from an analyst role. He takes over for Stacy Searles, who's still part of the program, and I believe Kirby might have mentioned that as well, but he will not be on that on-field staff. So here's what Kirby had to say about the new assistants as they get ready for their first practice of the spring with the Bulldogs.
Phil's been with us, as you guys know. He brought a lot of identity to our offense last year, a lot of energy into that room specifically. I'm excited about what Phil brought last year. He'll continue to do that. He and Stacy are both working with the offensive line. Warren and Edmond both help out with that. I think, the offensive line is probably the position that has the most need for coaches and eyes because it's a developmental position. Guys do not come in here ready to play, so we need a lot of guys to help with those units to get them better. And I know Phil will do that. He's got great experience in the National Football League. He's got a lot of good ideas for us offensively, especially in the run game. And he's been a joy to work with. So I'm excited about that. And Larry's come in and done a great job really quickly. He interviewed. We thought he did an outstanding job in the interview, very detailed in terms of things he believes in. He's worked for some really good coaches, and he's getting to know the guys still. He's been in workouts with them for a couple weeks now, and getting on the grass should be fun for him to get to coach those guys and get to know them. And he's been around defenses similar to ours, and he's very intelligent. He'll pick up on the defense quickly and do a great job helping our unit perform.
I think when we talk about spring practice, so much of the focus is on the new players, and Kirby's got a clip I'll play in a few minutes talking about the transfer portal and what they added. And I saw someone on Twitter was asking about Isaiah Canyon, but also it's just as big, guys, as for these new coaches. They've been around these guys, I assume some, during workouts and stuff like that, but it's not the same as being out there on the practice field. And Kipp, I have to imagine really it's a little bit different for Phil Rauscher because he was with the program last year. These players know him. He knows these players. But you look at a guy like Larry Knight, I feel like the next couple months, really over the next month during spring practice, this is a great opportunity for him to get to know these players and to get to know what he's working with in that outside linebacker room.
Yeah, he gets most of these guys to work with, like you guys said. This is mostly a healthy group, and the one thing where Kirby tries to push back on is, whether or not he's got depth or not. But like that outside linebacker position, the fact that, Quintavious Johnson returns as a starter, yet you've got a lot of guys set to push him in year two, like Chase Linton, Darren Kinnebong. You didn't mention anything with Kamari Brooks. So you found it interesting. A couple of the freshmen coming off injuries. I think only one of them got mentioned as not being available for the spring. So, whatever Kamari Brooks is able to do as well. I just think that's a group that's oozing with depth and talent, guys that seem to be kind of flashing a little bit, close to becoming factors last season. You never really had a freshman breakthrough. If anything, it was kind of funny. Maybe Zayden Walker was kind of the guy that was breaking through as an edge rusher, but you got a lot of guys hungry and not really, any defined roles or, anybody locked in, because even though Quintavious was, the starter last season for most of the year, you're coming off, again, we keep harping on it, like one of the least productive seasons we've ever seen, if not the most least productive season from a pass rush perspective. So there's opportunity there, huge opportunity for somebody to impress this spring. More than one guys are going to, try to take advantage of that. So I think just like with those guys, Larry Knight's coming in saying, well, this is my opportunity to prove how quickly I can get these guys to impress the rest of the coaching staff, how quickly I can make life hard for the other new coach in Phil Rauscher. Like, again, if Larry Knight's guys are making these experienced offensive tackles struggle, then maybe the heat's on Phil a little bit. Like, dang, I'm returning both starters at offensive tackle, but yet my guys can't keep Gunnar Stockton from having to get the ball out, even in non-contact scenarios. So, yeah, this is a huge opportunity for Larry to impress everyone. And obviously, Kirby could have picked, any number of guys for this job. So that there's going to be a lot of people just really interested to see how Larry does with these guys in the first couple of weeks.
Good point about Larry and Phil's guys going up against each other. And Kipp mentioned depth also. At one point, Kirby was asked what position group he is happy with in terms of depth. Kirby said, quote, "Yeah, we've talked about this many times in here. Nobody would be surprised by this answer. None." And that was it. I mean, and that was to be expected. Mentioning the transfers, some of the guys that Georgia's added. I think in total, Georgia added 8 transfers from the collegiate level, and then you factor in also Dallas Dickerson, that they got the wide receiver that was going to go to Kentucky. He comes to Georgia, and then also the quarterback that they got from Oregon. So I don't really consider those guys part of that transfer class, but in total, that's 10, Bryson Beaver being that Oregon quarterback. So Kirby was asked about the portal, not only what Georgia added, but probably more importantly, when you look at this roster, what Georgia retained. What did he think about the job that they did in the portal, and just really the shape of the roster coming out of the portal season?
Very pleased with it. We're kind of past that point now. Looking back, it's one of those things that we targeted some guys that went in and we hit on them, and we really worked hard on retention with our team to retain the guys we have. We think that's what provides a winning culture, what provides a locker room culture. Is retaining guys and guys having relationships. At the end of the day, you play for the guys you play with, and most teams that are a bunch of independent contractors don't play as well together. And we sold ourselves on keeping the guys we got and building on that culture, and we'll see how much better we can make them.
Yeah, a little bit later, Kirby talked about a couple of the transfers. Isaiah Canyon, which I saw L.A. Carey on Twitter asked about. He also talked about Dante Dowdell, and I thought it was interesting whether the Isaiah Canyon, Kirby brought up, this was a guy we knew in high school. He remembered Mike Bobo going down there and watching him. And there was another time during, can't remember, I think that was with Glory when he sat down with him when the site was unveiled, that Kirby kind of talked like he thought Georgia should have been in on Isaiah Canyon, back when he was a high school recruit, a kid from Warner Robins. Wanted to mention, too, Gunner, we talked to him, and he said that Isaiah Canyon, quote, he's got the ideal body for a receiver. So, Ben, I don't know if either one of those quotes about Isaiah Canyon caught your attention, but me seeing that, I was like, that's pretty interesting, just the praise that Isaiah's already getting as he just gets started at Georgia.
Well, I think when you look at, and they're not identical, but when you look at who Gunner Stockton looked the most comfortable throwing the ball to last year, it was probably Colby Young. So I can understand why that frame and then his ability to move within that frame is a big, it's a big window for Gunner Stockton to throw into. So I can see why he would say that. And I know that he was asked, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more about explosives and getting the ball down the field and things like that. And I think just having a guy that can move the way that Isaiah Canyon can move at that size, that's a quarterback's best friend. And I think that that's why he was quick to point that out, because it was not easy to get Gunner Stockton to single out individuals on that offense or defense for that matter when he was asked questions throughout the day-to-day. But Isaiah Canyon was one that he certainly was quick to point that out on.
I wanted to play a clip as well. Kirby talking about the receivers as a whole. I asked him because they lost a ton. They lost a ton of experience at receiver over this offseason. If I'm remembering right, among the wide receivers, they lost 4 of the 5 top pass catchers from a year ago. London Humphreys is the only guy that's back among that group. Adding Isaiah Canyon certainly helps, but I asked Kirby for his impression of this receiver core right now and what he wants to see from this group over the course of spring.
It's young. We basically got one kid in from the portal, and he's bringing a little more experience. Where years past, there might have been more guys coming in from the portal, or if you still count London that way, I think he's now been here 2 years within our program. So some good competition out there. A lot of those guys haven't proven they can do it. They're going to get an opportunity to do that in the spring. It's one of those positions that you're going to get 10 to 15 balls a day that are competitive, and how many of those can you make? There are these one-on-one situations where they're downfield, they're contested, you got somebody hanging all over you. There's no free access in the SEC. So you earn what you get, and you have to get used to making plays with people all over you. And that's what we're going to need in the biggest matchups. So we're going to try to simulate that in practice and, see where these guys are, see what kind of growth a lot of the young ones have made, and see where they can take us.
Yep, I thought it was really interesting that Kirby brought up, how competitive reps are, and these guys aren't going to be getting a whole lot of free releases and getting to show out at wide receiver, and me just sitting here thinking about this next month, spring practice and these guys going at it. I don't know if there's a better test for these wide receivers and for the coaches to see, all right, these are the receivers we like, than going up against these cornerbacks, man, because I really think that Georgia's corners, they're going to make life hard on these receivers.
Not just the corners, the secondary in general. Like this secondary just seems, deep, talented, and I mean a lot of guys that play with an attitude. So I think, if for a guy like Isaiah Canyon, who's coming in and already knows what it's like to play in a competitive atmosphere against these DBs, but then also, like Talon Taylor, the other guys, they're trying to make an impact. Like I just think that this secondary is going to keep you honest every single day. And I just think that group right now, maybe the group I'm like least worried about going into spring. So wanting to see a more explosive downfield passing attack, like I think we are put in a situation where we should be able to learn a lot more about Georgia's, evolution offensively, which really makes Kirby's comments like fascinating to me. Like, he tried to hedge himself a little bit by saying, we got to block better. We also, got to be more explosive in the run game, which he always tries to do to make sure he doesn't lean too clearly on the statement he's trying to make. But I mean, he made it pretty obvious. Like Gunnar Stockton, we got to hit more explosives downfield. We got to have him prepared to be able to do that. And I just think it's really interesting because he talked about how they looked and their explosives came on unscheduled downs. Like, okay, like let's schedule some explosives here. Like maybe that should be pretty high up on the this spring's goals is let's find some ways to schedule explosives and make sure that Gunnar just that becomes second nature for him to be willing to pull the trigger. And he needs these wide receivers to give him that added confidence so that he's able to do that, knowing that you might not find tighter throwing windows than what you're going to find in practice. We always harp on that, it being the hardest, competition in practice for Georgia, more difficult than games. This is one of those situations where you truly can have the iron sharpen the iron. And if Gunnar can get explosives, regularly against these DBs, then he is set up for the, that second year starter improvement that everyone's kind of looking for and not just, Gunnar falling back and hitting his check down or scrambling too quickly in the pocket. Like this is a key time for him to get some chemistry going with his pass catchers.
Let's dive into the explosive conversation. I've got a couple clips here, and we'll listen to them back to back. And the first one is Kirby talking about it. And the question that Kirby was asked was about Gunnar Stockton. It was, what steps does he need to take moving forward? We'll play that clip, and then we'll dive into Gunnar Stockton. Him asked a very similar question when it comes to explosives.
Well, we got to be more explosive offensively, and that does not fall solely on Gunnar, but that does fall partially with him. We have to be able to be more explosive in the run game, which some of that is blocking downfield or making people miss. And same thing in the pass game. We ran the ball better last year. So if we run the ball better, our play actions should be more explosive and more effective than they were. So that comes from decision making for him. That comes from protection from the front. And making plays vertical down the field for the other guys. But his steps are to grow, to get better. All the studies we did, a lot of our explosives came on unscheduled downs, unscheduled plays that maybe broke down or something happened, and he was able to scramble and make a play down the field. We've got to simulate those more for him and allow him to grow, to make those plays. But I think the number one step for him is take what the defense gives you, use the skill set of the players around you, and be more explosive.
Yeah, getting the ball to our playmakers, and just it's definitely per play. Just knowing where I need to go with the ball and get it to them, and because when I get the ball to our playmakers, good things happen, and that's the biggest part.
So we'll kind of take turns with this, but I'll start with you, Ben. In your mind, what is it going to take for this offense to be more explosive, to be able to take what was a pretty productive offense last year and take that step forward as an entire unit?
I think it goes a lot back to what we talked about previously with the fresh faces at wide receiver. And like you look at, I mean, I talked about this before, but I don't want this to come off as a criticism of anyone, whether that be Mike Bobo or Zachariah Branch or whatever, but because of what his game was and how dynamic Zachariah Branch was at what he was asked to do specifically, and where I think he was at his best was getting him the ball in short windows. Like his downfield targets were pretty minimal. And when he's catching 80 plus passes, and I don't know the exact number, but a heavy percentage of those were coming at or behind the line of scrimmage, it is going to hamstring your offense in some respects. And look, I'm not saying that they should have done it differently last season. I'm just saying when you have a guy like Zachariah, you almost have to get him the ball in those ways, and you have to do it the way that they did it. And he was explosive at times. Like he did things to change games with his explosiveness. But there were also moments where if teams were tackling well or they were swarming to the football when Zachariah Branch was getting it, that it wasn't going to be as simple as you get somebody in one-on-one coverage and they beat their man and you have a 70-yard touchdown down the field. So I bring up all that to say, I think a reason why Georgia did not go into the transfer portal very heavy, they just go and get Isaiah Canyon, the way I see it, to really backfill what you lost with Colby Young and Noah Thomas, is you've got guys that I believe, and I think it will show itself out this spring, are more dynamic down the field than what Georgia has had recently. And again, that's not a criticism of Colby Young. Colby Young was sensational at what Colby Young did, but he also wasn't going to just burn a guy off of the edge and go get you 80 yards. Like that's just not the type of receiver that he was. I think that London Humphreys can be that, and he maybe showed some more. He over the last 2 years has maybe showed more of that downfield explosiveness than a lot of people have. I think it goes without saying that Talon Taylor is going to be that. He got very few looks last season, but when he did, I mean, the one that comes to mind for everyone, he's running free behind a Alabama secondary, and sure, he doesn't haul it in, but that is an explosive that he is individually creating, and Georgia is recognizing his mismatch that he's presenting. I think that Sokovie White does a lot more of that down the field in the slot than Zachariah Branch did a year ago. I mean, I could keep going on. I mean, you've got Landon Roldan was someone that in the Sugar Bowl, they put him in, they take one shot down the field, it falls incomplete. So you've got to hit your hit rate needs to be better than some of these things that I've mentioned. But I mean, that's 4 guys right there. And that's not even counting Isaiah Canyon, who I think probably does that a little bit better than Colby Young did down the field. And that's 4 or 5 guys that we're talking about. And I haven't even mentioned any of the tight ends yet, which I think there's a bunch of different tight ends that have the ability to do that. That's not mentioning any of the freshmen. I think there's a couple of the freshmen that have come in that have the ability to do that. And so I think when you start adding up, like, who are the people that are going to get a lot of the snap share at receiver this year? Well, I just think that they're more inclined to make plays down the field than what they've had the last 2 seasons. And again, I want to make that very clear. I'm not criticizing what they had or how they used them in previous years. I think that's just a big reason why Georgia didn't feel compelled to go spend big money on a big time wide receiver 1 type that's going to make explosive plays down the field, because I think they already have that within their building. And I think that, Kirby Smart mentioned it. It's on Gunnar Stockton in some respect to probably be more confident pushing the ball down the field, not being worried about turnovers, which I know that he was asked about during press availability today as well. But it's also just knowing your personnel, which I think he did a really good job of last season, but knowing your personnel this season and getting them the ball in the ways that are going to make Georgia as explosive as possible. And so I think the recipe is there for Georgia to be explosive in the passing game this season. It's just hard at this juncture for a lot of people to really feel confident in saying that, because we haven't seen a lot of Talon Taylor. We haven't seen a lot of Jacoby White. We haven't seen a lot of Landon Roldan. And I think that the more reps they get this spring, the more buzz that's going to come out around that receiver group and just Georgia's ability to push the ball down the field.
Yeah, I had asked Gunnar about how important this time of year is for building that rapport, because again, it's like he's been able to count on London Humphreys, but the rest of the guys, they haven't played very much. And Gunnar talked about how important this is, and even the off season when they've had chances, to have throwing sessions and things like that. Ben hit on some of my biggest points with the explosives. One, they have to do a better job with these tight ends. If the usage as far as targets looks like it did a year ago, I think it's a failure, because I think this is the deepest tight end room in the country. And, I think some of that's on Gunnar, again, with confidence, being willing to throw across the middle. Sometimes you're going to have to throw over a linebacker. You have to work at that. You got to rep that and get to the point where you feel comfortable doing it, and knowing that you can count on those guys to make plays. And, to the point too, with Gunnar being more aggressive, not being afraid to make mistakes or have turnovers. Gunnar did a good job last year of not throwing interceptions, but there were times that Kirby talked about, sometimes he's got to, put the ball up there and count on his guy to make plays. And sometimes when you do that, you might throw some more interceptions. And I was sitting here thinking about it, and I kind of compare it to college basketball, and we'll talk about that later on in this episode, but sometimes I'll look at somebody's shooting numbers and it's like, hey, this guy shot 80% from the field. And for me, looking at that, my initial reaction is that guy should have shot more. Like, that number's way too high. There needs to be some misses, and there needs to be, you're not going to be perfect. You need to take advantage of when you're feeling it and when you are giving, when you're given opportunities to make plays. So I kind of see that with Gunnar. Everybody wants that interception number to be down. You don't want him turning the ball over, and we know how dangerous that can be when you do that. But I think there has to be a confidence in Gunnar to make those plays, understanding you might have more turnovers than you did a year ago, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's not the be-all, end-all. You can be a more productive quarterback even if that number goes up, because you're taking chances and giving your guys opportunities to make plays. Kipp, what are your thoughts just on the explosive conversation and what Georgia needs to do to try to make this offense a more explosive unit?
Listen, Gunnar avoided negative plays as well as any quarterback last season, but he also avoided a lot of positive plays because of that. And, I early on this NBA season, the Hawks had a player, Luke Kennard, a complete sniper, okay? Like, one of the highest active percentages of any three-point players in the league. And so the Hawks got him really excited. He was way too picky on his three-pointers. He would not shoot the ball unless it was a perfect situation, which led to him only attempting like 3.2, 3.3 threes per game. So we weren't even able to fully unlock his skill set. Sent him off to the Lakers. He's shooting like half a percentage point lower with them, but that's their problem. The point is that sure, you can avoid making mistakes at all costs and be highly efficient, but you're leaving points on the board. And that's exactly what Gunnar Stockton did last season. And I mean, he owes Oscar Delp probably a couple steak dinners, and we might see that next season, because there were just throws that were never made to him wide open. I mean, you mentioned tight ends like Austin Lucky too, but it also, spread into like Noah Thomas had a couple that he was wide open on. We know that Gunnar is willing to get tough yards with his legs. He's basically just, I don't want to insult his athleticism, but he's just like having a fullback out there, and he's willing to truck guys. He can make a guy miss if he needed to, but it's not the most efficient use of Georgia's offense. Should be the fourth to fifth progression and not the second, maybe third. That's where Gunnar Stockton has to improve. And forget willing to make mistakes. How about just not make mistakes, but also make explosives? Like, still perform as efficiently as you did last season for the most part, but get that ball down the field. And that's the part of this offense you still have to unlock. And I think, again, that just comes from not just his processing happening and the confidence, but I mean, you got to let go. And then that's the whole point of where I began with the Luke Kennard thing. Like, if you're really good at something, you can't now just get, so fine-tuned to where it has to be a perfect situation for you to let it go again. And I mean, bottle up whatever his mindset was for that Tennessee game. Recreate that. I mean, he let it rip from start to finish in that game. His best throws of the season, and it was the early part of the season. You thought, okay, this guy's about to take over college football, and you didn't really. I mean, he played really well against Ole Miss in the regular season, but you didn't see that kind of just fearless Gunnar Stockton consistently the rest of the season. That's what they got to figure out. Like, what's preventing him from, just being willing to make those throws, because he showed he can make them. Those were NFL throws. So just, again, get back to that, let it loose. And then, like you said, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but this is where the coaching staff, like Kirby said, you got to put him in situations to where he can efficiently create explosives scheduled without the play breaking down. And when it does break down, you know that he can use his legs, and you know that all those plays are available. But let's keep those in the secondary playbook.
Yeah, to Kipp's point, the Tennessee game, I mean, I think about the London Humphreys throw, but several plays in that game, we're talking about that was the third game of the season. And that was on the road, which was very impressive. But, you didn't see that kind of explosiveness and that the willingness to take that deep shot and the willingness to say, all right, it's fourth down and I'm going to throw a ball to London Humphreys and put it right on the money. We know Gunnar can, but he's got to do it more consistently for the offense to take a step forward and for Gunnar to do so as well. All right, this last clip from today's press conference. Earlier on Tuesday, Georgia football put out a video with some of the players talking, and folks jumped on that there were some white Georgia helmets in the background of this video. People were really excited. These have been used in the past for photo shoots with recruits and trying to drum up some excitement. Kirby was asked about this, if there's any interest in breaking out those uniforms or any other alternate uniforms, and Kirby ended his press conference in a pretty memorable way. This is what he had to say.
I hear that stuff all the time, the chatter online about how much I supposedly hate all that stuff. That's never been my stance. Just because somebody doesn't do it doesn't mean you don't like it. For me, I focus on the guys like playing the game and worry more about winning the game than what you wear, and that's been a staple for me. But our guys have brought it up several times, and I know a lot of people brought it up. I'm so sick of hearing about it that, to be honest with you, if they can triple our subscribers to Glory, I'll wear the shit. So if they want to triple the subs and get it done by G-Day, I'll be all about it. Y'all get them to do it, and I'm in.
Ben, you don't know how tempted I was to take that video and just very poorly overlay the glory with dogs 24/7. Just like make it just really, really tune it up. But yeah, Ben, you think that's coming anytime soon?
I don't know. I guess I'll have to check the bottom line at the end of spring practice to see how they've done over there. Glory. I mean, I'll say this: I thought it was a very funny moment. I have been very critical in the past of Kirby. I'm not often critical of Kirby Smart. One area where I have been critical of Kirby Smart is his willingness to wear the alternate jerseys. I joked back on Black Friday a couple years ago when Georgia's down 17-0 at halftime. I'm like, see, if Kirby Smart would just open his mind to the black jerseys, they'd be up 17-0 at halftime, not down 17-0 at halftime. But then they end up winning that game, so he never was going to learn his lesson on that one. So I'm not saying he looked over my way when he said that just because someone doesn't do it doesn't mean they don't like it, but he did kind of look over my way. So I don't know. Maybe our podcasts have gotten to the desk of Kirby Smart more than we think. Look, I think anybody who watches Georgia football would love to see Georgia play in the black jerseys more. We've all seen the recruiting uniforms, the all whites that look incredible when they're doing their recruiting photo shoots. I mean, Raylan Wilson lit up today when he was talking about the white, he sort of smiled and is like, I don't think I've seen them since I was in recruiting, but I'd love to wear them. Like, players want to play in them, fans want to see them. And look, if I'm Kirby Smart and I got to put an ultimatum on some folks to try and drive up the interest in some, it's important. I won't deny them generating money for Glory right now is very important to the future success, especially the short-term and near-term success of the Georgia football team. I get why that he would use that as a leveraging point to get people to subscribe. I hope that you all subscribe to Dogs 24/7 as well, but I'm not sitting here saying go subscribe to Glory, but I do want to see Georgia play football in black jerseys and the all whites. So if that's what it takes, I'm not telling you not to go do that. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I'm with you, Ben, that I've always found it strange how reluctant he is to break out those jerseys. I mean, I think it was very early on in his time at Georgia that, like, they wore them against Louisiana, the black jerseys. Either one of y'all correct me, is the Chick-fil-A Bowl when they beat Cincinnati, is that the last time they've worn the black uniforms?
He didn't wear them during the title run, so it has to be.
Was that the game where they did the ones with like the dog collars on them? See, and that's the thing. It's like the last black jerseys they wore were the bad versions of them. I don't want to be that guy, but it's like no one liked the dog collar jersey. So it's like, come on, got to give the people the black jersey without the dog collar.
Yeah, and there's been a few times that I've like had stories pre-written just in case, like the time they played Tennessee. I think that was a couple years ago. I was like, this would be a good time to break out the black jersey, but. If you got to bump up those sub numbers, then maybe that's the way to do it. And it will be funny when he does all that and then they wear them at the spring game and then that's the end of it.
That's what I was going to say. Like, I don't even know if they have the white jerseys available currently. Like in the past, I've heard that they were just recruiting jerseys. So I don't know. Maybe they've changed that. Maybe they've added that to the arsenal. But like, I think that's the way we see it going is it'll end up being a black jersey versus an all white team jersey in the spring game, and then that'll be the last we see of it. But look, I'll tell you this: Kirby Smart's a man of his word. If they triple the subscriber numbers to Glory by the end of the spring, Georgia will be wearing at least a black jersey or an all-white jersey if that now exists in the fall. I'm confident in that, but they will have to hit that. He's not going to provide that ultimatum, and then they only double the subscriber numbers. And he's going to be like, okay, they tried their best. Like, you got to get to triple the subscriber numbers, and he's not going to tell you what they are right now. So you're just going to have to guess.
Yeah, I was really hoping he was going to set up one of those thermometers, you know what I'm talking about, where they do the fundraisers and they fill them in. Maybe we can get that there in the team meeting room, and we can follow that through the spring. Ben, anything else, whether it was Kirby, whether it was some of the players that we heard today, that we learned today, that you want to throw out there?
Well, we talked a lot about it on the offensive side of the ball. Like Kirby Smart was basically asked, and I think it was in the context of like last year you were talking about running the ball and stopping the run. Like, what are the themes or identities that you want to have this year? And he made very clear, like, running the ball and stopping the run is always going to be part of the identity because you get to an end of the game and you're winning. You got to be able to run the ball. If you're losing, you're going to have to be able to stop the run to be able to find a way to win those games. So he made it clear that's not any different just because that was the mantra going into last season. But he called out the explosive plays on offense, specifically when he was asked about Gunnar Stockton. So I assume that it has more to do with explosive plays in the pass game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, he brought up what I think we talked about all last season, all off season, all the year before that, being more disruptive on the defensive side of the ball. I know that conversation starts with the pass rush and getting after the quarterback. But I mean, I remember back in 2021, 2022, Georgia prided itself on havoc plays, and it was havoc plays were the buzz phrase that got thrown out every single week when you're talking about this Georgia defense. And those havoc plays just haven't existed over the last 2 years. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and we don't need to get into all of those reasons, but I think sort of like I was talking about when we were bringing up the wide receivers, like, was last year's unit what they did well? I think they stopped the run really, really well. I think that their guys on the edge, you could trust them to set the edge and be able to make it very hard for teams to run the football. Were they designed to get after the quarterback the way that maybe an Amaris Williams is going to be designed to? I'm not entirely sure. I think some of these young guys as well that we've mentioned a bunch, Darren Akinnigbon, Chase Linton, Isaiah Gibson, we're going to see more of them. Maybe they're more equipped to be guys that are getting after the quarterback. But I also think that goes to the back end as well. And I know it starts up front. You get after the quarterback. they're going to make more mistakes. But you just need more people in the secondary to get their hands on the football as well. Like, even if it's not turning the ball over, it's just make plays on the football in coverage. And so I don't think it just starts and ends with the outside backers. I think that it probably starts with the outside backers and them getting after the quarterback more. Some of those interior defensive linemen creating a little bit more pass rush chaos on that side of the ball. But it also extends all the way to the back end too. And I think that just the more chaos, the more havoc, the more disruption that gets created on this defense, the more confident that everybody in that building is going to feel. And so that's one where I don't know exactly what Georgia's pass rush is going to look like. I don't know what Georgia's havoc meter is going to look like this season, but that's clearly an area that Kirby Smart is reinforcing has to improve for Georgia to get to where it wants to go defensively.
Was going to mention too, mentioning Amaris Williams. He's a guy I'm really interested in and how he settles in at Georgia. And I asked Raylan Wilson about him, and he said one speed guy and that he's just really fast. So we're going to see him get to work and see what he can contribute to that outside linebacker room. All right, we're going to take a quick break, come back and talk about some Georgia basketball. The Bulldogs getting ready for the NCAA Tournament. Want to mention, subscribe to Dogs 24/7. Hey, if we're looking for subscriptions, we're doing it here at Dogs 24/7 too. Can't promise any white helmets or white uniforms, but we'll tell you all about it over on the Junkyard. Sign up now. We still got our 50% off sale. Get a VIP membership for an entire year for 50% the normal price. Great time to join because we're in the middle of spring practice. I'm getting ready to go to Buffalo to follow Georgia in March Madness. Olivia Sayers covering baseball for us was going to shout out Cole Johnson, man, absolutely ruined some Tennessee fans' days. Looked like Tennessee was getting ready for that walk-off. And Ben, what would you think of how Cole Johnson cleaned that thing up?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm a college baseball aficionado or I'm dialed in on everything that's happening in college baseball, but I'll say it. And I know that we're coming from a place, like, obviously we're laser focused on Georgia sports. That's got to be the clip of the year in college baseball. Like and look, everyone's going to trash on Stone Lawless and it's funny to make fun of him, whatever. That whole series was just egos on celebration, and everyone trying to outdo one another and how over the top they were being. So I'm not going to point fingers and say like, oh, Stone Lawless should be humiliated and feel ashamed of himself. The Tennessee teammates of his are going to make fun of him plenty. And I think that will cover all of that. But the clip itself was just unbelievable. The confidence with which he was convinced he just hit the go-ahead home run. And then I love the celebration. Again, I know there were some Tennessee folks being critical. Everyone loves to do this when you lose, like, oh, acting like you just won the Super Bowl or whatever. But it's like, you just rob a home run to end a game. Very rarely are you robbing a home run for the final out of a game. And then the celebration going on in center field. I mean, that to me, you're going to be hard. And there's it's a clippable sport. I will say that college baseball has a lot of that happening. I find it hard to believe that there's going to be a more enjoyable clip for anyone to watch just as an objective college baseball bystander than that one. That was really, really fun. I'll admit I wasn't watching the game, but I saw the clip and then I had to tune into like what else had happened. Like I wasn't aware of like the dugout incident that had happened earlier in the series where the foul ball had gone into the dugout. Tennessee didn't move out of the way and Wes Johnson's pissed. And then everybody's arguing about whether or not what the rules actually are and what Tennessee has to do. I think it's great. I love college baseball because of that. Like, again, I just admitted I'm not dialed in, but like the fun of it is in that, like how just much people don't care and they have fun. Like that's what the sport is in college baseball. That's why it's great. And I think that clip encapsulated that to a T.
Yeah, and it was all over the place. I know Pat McAfee showed it on his show, so it has gone viral and a big moment there. And like I said, if you subscribe to Dogs 24/7, Olivia's done a great job covering baseball. So fantastic time to sign up, and we hope you guys will do so if you haven't already. So we're going to take a quick break. Be right back. guys Georgia men's basketball minute, and this will probably be several minutes because we got a lot to talk about. Georgia is headed back to the NCAA tournament. This marks the first time since 2001-2002 Georgia went to the tournament in consecutive seasons. Georgia is an 8 seed in the Midwest region. They are playing 9 seed St. Louis. That game will be played in Buffalo. That game, the first round game, Thursday night, 9:45 Eastern Time. That will be televised on CBS. If Georgia were to win, more than likely they would play number 1 seed Michigan in the second round of the tournament. And if Georgia were able to go that far, that would mean going on to the second weekend and going to the Sweet 16. Georgia looking for its first NCAA tournament victory since 2002, which was also the last time they had gone in consecutive seasons. I've got some stuff we can talk about with St. Louis, and we'll bring them up here in a minute. But, Ben, just what's your reaction to where Georgia got in the tournament bracket, them being an 8 seed, and the path they have going forward?
Well, in some respects, like last year, you catch the most underseeded team in the tournament in Gonzaga, a team that's been there, done that, with a head coach that's been there, done that. It's not the most fortunate draw last year when you're getting into your first tournament in a while. On the flip side of it this year, I mean, like, you can look at St. Louis either way. Like, if you're trying to look at it through rose-colored glasses, you can do that. If you want to say that you're catching a break in some respects, you can probably do that too. I mean, you're playing a team that is, from a mid-major. I know mid-majors to power conferences don't have the gap the way that they do in football, but you're catching a mid-major team that didn't play great down the stretch, and it's probably been in the tournament field for long enough that they weren't fighting for their lives at the end of the season, and that might have been part of that. And so, I mean, you're a 2.5 point favorite. That certainly wasn't the case going into the game last year. And so, in terms of draw, like, you obviously are getting a more favorable draw this year than you got last year. And so I think that alone is positive. On the flip side of it, it's like, I think St. Louis is a really good team. I was telling Jordan this earlier today. Like, I watched the Dayton St. Louis game. That was their conference championship game that Dayton ends up winning the game. It was a wild finish. I think both teams had game-winning buckets on 2 or 3 occasions in the final, like 20 seconds. And I was watching that game and I said, I don't care who either of these teams are playing. I'm taking Dayton and I'm taking St. Louis to win their first round games because I had so much fun watching this game. And in some respects, like, I think, and this is illogical, but it's just the way that sports fans think. St. Louis losing that game, I almost think helps them because they just got this ugly taste in their mouth in a game that they very easily could have won multiple times in that final 20 to 30 seconds. And so from that respect, I don't love it. They've got a big man that is a really, really fun player to watch. I believe they're calling him Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if I'm not mistaken. He is very, very fun. And as we know, it is more important than ever for Somto Surreal to not only stay out of foul trouble, which is hard to do in the tournament for guys of his size because those guys can pick up fouls real quick once you get a referee that has a little bit of a quick whistle, and then all of a sudden everything changes. But also just stay in the game, man. Like, I think that he has caught some reputation flagrant fouls that are unfair to him recently, but you got to go into these things knowing what your reputation is. And if your elbows are above your shoulders and you're catching anyone anywhere close to their head with any kind of force, you're probably going to get kicked out of the game. Now, maybe SEC refs were a little bit more quick on that because they were familiar with Somto Surreal in a way that NCAA tournament refs maybe won't be. So maybe he'll get a little bit more forgiveness on that front in the NCAA tournament. But I think to cause some problems for what St. Louis does well, he has to stay in the game. And I think that's the case for every game that they have moving forward. I mean, we talked about if they win that first round matchup and they catch Michigan, I kind of like the matchup for Georgia if we're talking about all the 1 seeds. Like, Georgia could have played Florida 42 times this season and they were going to lose 42 times, respectfully. I think that Michigan presents an opportunity for Georgia if they're going to steal an 8-1 game. Like, I think Michigan was the right one because I don't think Arizona was going to be a favorable option for them. I've already said what I've said about Florida. I'm blanking on who the fourth one is. Who's the fourth one, Jordan? Michigan?
Duke.
Is Duke
Michigan, Duke.
Okay, yeah, Duke. Well, I would never pick Georgia to beat Duke in a basketball game until I saw it happen. So, like, I think you're catching the right one if you can get past St. Louis. I don't think it's easy to get past St. Louis, and I don't think that you're ever going to be favored as an 8 seed playing a 1. But if you were to draw up how Georgia would be able to get to the second weekend, I would say playing a mid-major that didn't play great down the stretch and playing a 1 seed that wasn't, they haven't done a whole lot of that at Michigan. Now, I know Dusty May's done a whole lot of it. He's made these runs before. And so maybe now I'm talking myself into you don't really got a chance against Michigan either. But hey, when you're in the 8 line, that's kind of the way it is. You're going to hit a 1 in the second round if you get there. And the chances of you winning that game aren't very high because those teams are 1 seeds for a reason.
Yeah, I mentioned too, Dusty May and Mike White go way back because
That's right.
Dusty coached for him at Florida, so maybe he knows, what it's going to take. Shout out Claw8814 on Twitter or YouTube saying, "I like the matchup if Georgia is able to score more points. That will be pretty key." Robbie Avila is the guy you were talking about for St. Louis. He's averaging 12.9 points per game, shooting just short of 51% from the field. Robbie Avila, a.k.a. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a.k.a. I've not seen this one, Larry Blurred, because he wears the specs, a.k.a. Milk Chamberlain. So the thing that really interests me with this matchup, you look at both of these teams, the offense in this game, we may not have a whole lot of stops. And you look at St. Louis specifically, they come into the tournament second nationally in three-point percentage, 7th in field goal percentage, 10th in scoring, 10th in assists. And I think the big question if you're Georgia is, okay, are their numbers that good because they're playing in the A-10, or is this a legitimate team that could give us trouble? And I look at this matchup, I'm picking Georgia in this matchup. The 2 guys I want to watch, Ben mentioned earlier, Santo Surreal. I think he's got to play really well. I think Georgia needs to win the rebounding battle and do so pretty forcibly, because when you look at, let's say they do advance, there's not going to be very many opportunities where Georgia wins the rebounding battle. The key just becomes keeping it close. And then Ben and I were talking after interviews. The other guy I would shout out is Jeremiah Wilkinson. I kind of feel like this offense goes as he goes, and he's a very confident shooter, and there are times where you just can't really stop him. But if he gets off to a slow start, it kind of feels like everyone else is kind of trying to gather themselves, trying to find their footing. I'm watching both of those guys, but I like Georgia's matchup here. Now, the second round, I just don't see them beating this Michigan team. I think Michigan's size is going to give Georgia trouble. But even again, if you win the first game, I was talking to someone earlier today. I was 7 years old the last time Georgia won an NCAA tournament game. So that's an accomplishment if you could just do that. So, Kipp, I'm sorry to burst your bubble there with that little factoid. But any thoughts on this matchup? And go ahead and give a prediction as Georgia move on to the second round.
Yeah, what were you, Kipp? Like 30-something?
That was so mean.
No.
That was so unnecessary.
He was
Yeah.
thinking. That's the only reason I said it.
I can't believe I called you the moral compass of this side earlier. You just let that one rip. A little inside baseball there, guys. I'm taking that one back. I'm not a gambler, but I will say hammer the over no matter what the number is. If it's 200, still hammer it. These 2 teams are, they don't care. They don't have any, like Ben right there with the joke. Like they completely are. They're not worried to do anything. And I think for Georgia, that does provide an opportunity because St. Louis, they cough up the basketball. Like they turn the ball over a lot because of their tempo. And I think that's where Georgia has to take advantage. Cannon Catchings, whether or not he's hot or not, shooting, that's going to determine whether maybe Georgia is able to be competitive in the second game. But his defensive abilities are going to, he has to show up on that end along with Wilkinson to basically force the issue. And they're going to set a ton of screens, and Santo just has to stay mindful of that. Like you guys mentioned, he's got to play this entire game if possible. Like he's got to be, do not get in foul trouble. Do not make mental errors to take yourself out of the game early because they're, like I said, they're going to set a lot of screens. They got like 4 or 5 guys shooting over 39% from 3-point range. So they're going to set those guys up and they're going to play with tempo to do that. So they also, like Georgia, like these teams have some similarities where they're willing to go 7 deep at minimum. Like they got like 7 or 8 guys that average 9 points or more. So I think, again, you're going to have to be competitive on the glass, but also just know that make the most of these turnovers, keep the pressure on. And they are a very streaky team, and that's how the tournament is. Like if Georgia catches them and they're nailing everything, you just saw against Ole Miss, like if you get a guy or two that's just, shooting, can't miss, shooting magnet ball there, it's tough to beat in a 1-game scenario. But I think Georgia's mindset into this has to be, okay, guys, let's keep the pressure on these guys from start to finish and make sure that we do not get in foul trouble early. And I think if they're able to do that, I mean, I like them to win this game, but I do think this is just going to be like a free-for-all with 2 teams that love to play tempo and just are willing to, throw it up knowing that they're going to get 10 more possessions down the road.
All right, who's your pick?
I got Georgia winning this one, getting to the second round. And unlike Ben, I don't like the matchup against Michigan because they got bigs for days. Yaxel Lindenberg at forward is a first-round pick, but then they also have Adi Mara and Morris Johnson Jr. Like those 3 guys are just going to make life completely, I think, downright miserable for Georgia's bigs if they do get to the second round. But that is where I have Georgia getting. And again, like you guys say, maybe I was a little bit older than Jordan the last time Georgia won a basketball game. Was not in my 30s. I'm just going to put that out there. I'll go ahead and age myself to say I was not in my 30s when it happened, but I was definitely in my 20s.
All right, Ben. So I'm picking Georgia. I will say they beat St. Louis. They lose to Michigan, which still I think that constitutes a successful NCAA tournament. What's your pick with this first game, and if you got them going on, what you see happening?
Like Kirby Smart, I'm a man of my word. When I was watching the Dayton St. Louis game, I said I'm taking St. Louis in the first round, no matter who it is that they're playing. It's unfortunate that I'm now having to sit on a podcast talking to a bunch of Georgia fans, but I said what I said about St. Louis when I'm watching that game last Saturday, and I can't back off of that. So I am taking St. Louis. I think it'll be a close one. I think what Jordan said around Jeremiah Wilkinson is spot on. Like if Jeremiah Wilkinson has one of those games where, and I think you could probably put Cannon Catchings in that conversation now too, because he's someone that could go for 25, 30 on any given night at this point. So if one of the 2 of them has that kind of night, I do think that they'll get by St. Louis. I just think you get into these tournament environments. We've seen in the SEC tournament last year, in the NCAA tournament last year, and the SEC tournament this year, like Georgia just goes into these neutral site environments and it doesn't feel like they are confident shooting the basketball. And so I'm going to kind of need to see it to believe it. I think that St. Louis ends up pulling it off. Billikens, one of the best mascots in all of college basketball. I think they pull it off. And the more that y'all have talked about it, even if Georgia were to get through, with as much of a problem as Florida presented for them, I think of Michigan and I know they had a better record than Florida this season, and I know that Florida had a really ugly loss in the conference tournament. But I think of Michigan as a watered down version of Florida. That's how I look at them, and so I think that if you can, maybe hit some shots against Michigan, you've got a better shot to beat Michigan than you would Florida, but you all have pretty much talked me out of Georgia's chances against Michigan. So I don't have them beating St. Louis, but even if they do, I don't really think have them going to the second weekend.
Georgia and St. Louis, 9:45 Eastern time, and might get moved back because of the game before it. That will be in Buffalo. I'll be up in Buffalo, so stay glued to Dogs 24/7. I'll have all kinds of content flying out tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, so we'll have some stuff Wednesday afternoon. Get ready for the big game. Yeah, excited to go up there and see what happens. All right, before we get out of here, Kipp mentioned the Atlanta Hawks earlier. Hawks are riding a 10-game win streak. Are we believing, Kipp? What do we think about where the Hawks find themselves right now?
Yeah, the 10-game win streak where at 9 games, we didn't move up one seed at all. Like we won 9 games in a row without even like moving up a seed. That's because of them winning like 4 games in December. That's what happens. But there are like 6 teams all bunched up between the 5 seed and the 10th seed. And yeah, the Hawks are just like a game and a half out. I think getting the 6th seed, avoiding that, the play-in tournament is an entertaining goal right now. I mean, everyone talked about who they were playing during this win streak. Well, you just beat a team that was ahead of them. And really, I mean, beat them handily. They came back toward the end, but the Hawks were up by 20 for a lot of the game. So I think, again, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the Hawks have a chance to get the most improved player in the NBA 2 seasons in a row. That's a credit to them. Dyson Daniels is just playing, again, all NBA defense once again. And, yeah, there is some reason for hope. And if they can get to the first round of the playoffs, you got a building block for next season, and then we can still root for the Pelicans and the Bucks to lose as many times as possible. You're watching this tournament. There are a couple very inconsistent teams. You got Kansas with Darren Peterson. They tend to win games without him and then lose games with him, but still he's a 20-point scorer anytime he wants to. And then our guy, A.J. DeBonsa from BYU. They lost their second best player out for the season, but can he just, put the team on his back and stretch together some wins? And he's been the best player in college basketball. If it's not Cam Boozer, it's definitely AJ really emerged. Those are just guys that, again, they got a great chance to win those rigged ping pong balls, in the lottery. If the league wants to smile upon the Hawks just one more time, it's as good of a draft as ever to have really a top 10 pick. There's a lot of other guys I can talk about. Those are kind of the guys that, the top 2 guys that are going to be needed to take their game to another level because their teams are heavily inconsistent.
Ben, you got any thoughts on the Hawks getting hot?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first text messages I sent out this morning was to a group of friends, and I said, the Hawks are so close to having me buy all the way back in. We're only a couple weeks removed from me saying there's no hope in Atlanta sports right now, and it's the worst that it's ever been. And I mean, I think Kipp's right. I think finding a way to get to that 6th seed, really important. Right now, if you're in the 6th seed, I know things can change, but you'd be catching New York. And I think, another Hawks-Knicks series, they wouldn't have their villain, Trae Young, to really lean in on. But if I know New York sports fans, they'll find someone. So I think that getting to that 6 is important. They're playing really good basketball right now. Jalen Johnson is so good. And I've talked about how I love Darius Acuff. I think with as ball dominant as Jalen Johnson is, it really doesn't make sense for the Hawks to go that route, especially after they just offloaded an undersized guard. And I know Darius Acuff plays more above the rim than Trae Young ever was going to, but still, I don't think you probably want to go that route. A guy that I'm bummed isn't going to be playing in the tournament is North Carolina's Caleb Wilson. He's a hometown guy, and I think it would have just been nice to see how he played in a tournament environment, because I could see you end up, the Hawks right now, it's like the Pelicans were at one point maybe looking at the 2 or 3 based off of lottery ball stats, which I know isn't the end all be all, but now it's maybe more in the 5-6 range. So it's you're lucky because this is a 10, 11, 12 deep draft that you can really feel good about, but you got to make the right choice here. You're kind of getting a freebie top 10 pick. You got to make the most of it. And so, yeah, like Kipp said, I'm going to be watching Thursday and Friday games as much for college basketball, but also for the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, I'm going to be watching all these guys very, very closely and saying who do I want the Hawks to get, so that I can now start, tweeting about someone other than Trae Young in the Atlanta Hawks world.
Houston guard Kingston Flemings. That's who you want to watch. That's who you want us to get. That's the guy. He's playing incredible right now. And I think he's probably the number 6 pick in the draft.
I like
Pro,
it.
Pro Scout Ben Wolk has ties to the Atlanta Hawks organization, so I think I can see that in your future. All right, we're going to end the episode right there. Thanks everyone who watched this live. Thanks everyone who was watching or listening to it after the fact. Be sure to go subscribe to dogs247.com. As I mentioned earlier, 50% off sale still going on and a fantastic time to join. Sign up right now. You'll have all our spring practice coverage and intel. You've got the Georgia men's basketball's run through March Madness. We'll see how long it goes. We know we'll be in Buffalo to cover at least one game. You have all the recruiting stuff. Ben Wolk does a fantastic job covering recruiting. Ben?
Yeah, I'll just say we're going to have a lot of visitors updates throughout this week because there's a lot of practices. There's guys that are on campus right now. We've got updates over at Dogs 24/7 on that. And I'll tease this. Stay at Dogs 24/7 because I think by the end of the week, you'll get some good recruiting news. Maybe by the end of the weekend is how I should describe it. But yeah, just a little tease there to go subscribe to Dogs 24/7.
That's why he's the best in the business. And like I mentioned, Olivia Sayre covers Georgia baseball for us. So if you sign up, you get baseball coverage as well. So we'll end the episode right there. For Kipp Adams and Ben Wolk, I'm Jordan Hill. Until next time, take care, everybody.